especially this age group. Is that better?
That's
Too dark.
That one will help when you
just knock the screen off. Yeah, I think it'll be okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time coming and your interest in this. I've got a relatively brief presentation, but I want to try and provide some context and my personal experience and background on what I feel like is a very important issue for our community going forward, not just in the next couple of years, but long term, and So I will start into that with a brief introduction. I'm actually currently running for the board today, or I'm currently running for the board. I am not here to promote myself or talk about me running for the board. We're going to talk about the CNR amendment, what I feel like is the impact on the community, and then why your vote is so important on this. A little bit of context, because a lot of people probably don't think about the declarant role, all the different impacts here in the community. We're just here enjoying this beautiful community, and I guess let me jump back and do an intro on myself briefly. So I am originally from Cumberland County. My parents moved here in 1979. I grew up, my dad had a mechanical contracting company. I grew up working in this community since I was a teenager. I went to college, got a business degree, came back and started a home building company with my dad 20 years ago here, Zuercher Homes. And we have pretty well exclusively focused on building homes in Fairfield for the last 20 years. So I am not a resident of Fairfield Glade, but I have been in Fairfield more days than not over the last 20 years. So back to the understanding the declarant role here, because this is going to come into play. This is very key in what is behind this entire amendment. Tom Anderson is the third declarant that we've had. It was originally Fairfield Glade Resorts, then it was Wyndham, and then Anderson, who came from Wyndham. My understanding is he was the head of real estate acquisitions for Wyndham. And part of his, when he left, was acquiring the declarant role here. So he is very networked in and tied in with Wyndham. So it's important to remember when we talk about voting here and the support behind this amendment. So a little bit of context in the lead up to this amendment, because this didn't just start this spring. Anderson started asserting, and if you've been following this, you've heard this sole judge term thrown around. He was the first declarant in my 20 years of being here to ever assert that he was the sole judge of where any road or water could get extended within the entire community. And essentially what he is doing in doing this is denying property owners' rights. If you own a C lot, he now says you have to come to me for permission if you want to make any improvements up to your property. So he is taken a stance that no other declarant had previously taken. And I don't know how many of you followed the news story we developed, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Laurelwood as a path forward later on. There was certainly a narrative that was trying to be pushed that Laurelwood was somehow approved in a non-legitimate manner by the previous board. All of that was approved, which really wasn't approved. It was a sale of lots from Fairfield Homes, or from Fairfield Glade, that we purchased prior to the declarant ever asserting. He's only been asserting this for probably the last 3 to 4 years, as far as I can remember, from when he brought that up. I spoke with the previous board about when they voted on selling us the lots, and they said they had never heard from him that he didn't want that to happen. So that was the first really inclination that we got from the declarant trying to control more within the community. In December, the declarant secured control of close to 2,000 club-owned lots. These are lots that the community club has taken back. Primarily C lots were what he took control of through the south area. South of Peavine is primarily where these lots are, but he took control of over 2,000 lots, and he's paying the club for 20 years. He secured this with options and exclusive purchase contracts. He's paying the club $5,000 a year for this.
So was that a vote by the board to let that happen?
the board brought it up in a meeting and voted on it right there in that meeting.
So
Yes.
then why is this CNR coming up now if they've already done that?
So that was just the lead up to the CNR. So there was a buildup. He's trying to secure all the property that he can so that no other builders or any private individuals can purchase these properties. And this really, when you back up and take a high-level view of this, this amendment is granting him an incredible amount of control over the remainder of Fairfield. He already, as the declarant, has the exclusive right to develop new subdivisions, like in the north. What he is trying to do here is solidify control over all the undeveloped areas. If you can hold on, we're going to do a Q&A when we get, and we can back up and go back through this if that's okay. Is Fairfield Glade, the club. So the community club owns approximately 2,000 lots. So when you look at some of the legal and structural issues with this amendment, the number one problem and how this was put to the board that they needed to pass this was based on this sole judge, that he controlled the access to be able to develop these lots, which is simply not legally correct. C lots exist in previously platted areas. When those plats get recorded with the Register of Deeds, the right-of-way in front of all these lots is dedicated to the county. That is county right-of-way. It does not matter what it says in the CNRs. They don't have control over the county right-of-way. People have the legal right to develop up to their property. And that is a key distinction. So yes, when you look at CNRs, they simply do not have jurisdiction over county right-of-way. They are subordinate to federal and state law. They stop at the edge of the property line. And again, I touched on this before about the amount of additional authority and control that this is giving to the declarant. And just as a baseline rule for a club, you don't give the developer more control. The developer's always going to try and take more control. That's what they want to do. The board needs to be looking out for the interests of the members. And I think that, to be fair to the board, they went into this with good intentions, but they do not appreciate the intentions of the declarant to control as much as he can. And like I said, that's just like 101. Don't give more control to the developer. You don't do that. The other thing that is very concerning about this amendment is the unlimited authority that it gives the declarant to charge private landowners as the wording, and it's important that we focus on what we're actually being asked to vote on here, such cost as determined by the declarant. And the declarant has come, I know, and given speeches about, oh, it could be $10,000 to $12,000, or these different scenarios. And there's been notes about the declarant is going to do these things or these. That's all fine and well, but that is not what you're being asked to vote on. You have to trust the declarant that he's going to do that. Because once this is voted on, the declarant essentially will have unlimited control to charge private lot owners whatever he wants. Such cost as determined by the declarant. And he's a for-profit entity, so he can put as much profit in there as he wants, as far as I understand. So, in essence, I believe that more likely than not, this will be used almost like a eminent domain, if you can think of that, we're going to come in, the declarant is going to come in and issue a letter to the private owner saying, we're going to be developing on your street. We're going to send you a breakdown of what you're going to owe. If you don't pay that, we're going to put a lien on your property. That amount is most likely going to be a number where pretty well everybody's going to say, I don't want to do it, and he'll take their property. It's a less expensive way for the declarant to just come in and take all the lots.
He will buy the property, will he not? He can't just take it.
Yeah, no, he will buy it at a price that he wants to pay.
Or that they want.
Or they will forfeit the lot. And when we think about the needs of the club, we do need more lots developed. You know, it is not like, as builders, we're not running out of lots tomorrow, but when you look 3 and 4 and 5 years down the road, with an annual building pace of around 120 houses a year, which is pretty well where we've stayed for the last 20 years, with the exception of the housing boom and crash. You know, numbers went up and then they went down, but that's pretty well the clip that we are at. We will need more lots developed. And we need more members here to distribute the cost. The board is not wrong in that. The more members here mean the costs get distributed among more residents, and that helps keep dues low for everybody. My concern with this, or one of my concerns with this, is that there is not a real plan here. It simply gives all the control to the declarant to do this and trust that he's going to do it. And charge fairly, yes. I am afraid this could likely limit growth and the amount of homes being built in our community. Currently, and the declarant kind of threw around some numbers that were a little confusing to understand, that sounded like they were building more houses than they were, but they're currently building less than 20 houses, or 20% of the homes in Fairfield. And in my 20 years of being here, the declarant has always taken a stance that was anti-competitive, would be the best way to put it, not developing lots for other builders. I had a very short stint early on with Tom where I was able to buy some lots from him, and when I essentially wouldn't play by his rules, which was him listing all of my houses and controlling all of my sales, he said, I'm done with you and I'm not selling you any more lots. And at which point I developed Laurelwood, and then he went after that because it was competition. So, a path forward to solve this solution is not going to be done by any one individual or entity. We need a path that respects property owners' rights. And I'll run you through a brief kind of overview of how we developed Laurelwood, because it's really kind of a model for how growth in the South can happen. And I have talked to other builders that are interested in doing the same thing we did in Laurelwood, and the club has said, you don't have the authority to do that per the declarant. You can't go in and develop roads. So I believe there are builders at the ready that want to go in and develop like Laurelwood in the South. And with the declarant getting out of the way, they will do that, and we will have this growth occur naturally. But Laurelwood was composed of, there's 14 lots in the subdivision. This is an aerial view of it here. 6 of these lots were purchased from the club. The club had taken, so 6 of these lots were purchased from the club. I believe 2 came from the county. And the rest of the lots, and this is how it should happen, we contacted the property owners and negotiated with them to buy their lot. And we said, we're interested in developing in the area. We've got to buy enough lots for it to make sense. The numbers have to make sense. You can't charge me $100,000 for the lot. But, you know, we worked out individual deals that the property owners agreed to purchase their lots, and then at our own expense. And that's a key distinction, too, between what we're talking about doing and what the declarant is talking about doing. At our own expense, we put the road in. We worked with the county and the road superintendent on how this needed to be built and installed.
Where is Laurelwood?
It's down near Druid Hills. Or Dorchester, sorry. I always say those backwards. I should know. These were all C lots. This was a grass road. But what you're looking at right here on the plat, that's all county right-of-way, where all of these improvements were built. There is not actually any need. We need to work with the club on sewer to get their approval because they control and manage sewer. But the right-of-way, you deal with the county on that. And the county is the authority.
Did the county put the roads in, or did you?
No, I did.
Okay.
So,
Your
So
road
the
is
county
this
has
one
the-
and the cul-de-sac?
yes.
Okay.
The
And it
county
comes off
has
the
the
Dorchester.
authority to let you do, or didn't really, but the county sets out a specific way that the roads have to be done and oversee it to make sure that you or any developer / declarant does it correctly. Is that not the case?
Yes, correct. There are standards that if you want to build this road to be accepted and put on the county road list, you have to get inspections by the county road superintendent, and there are specific details in how you have to build the road to a certain standard before they would agree to take over and maintain that road. That's a pretty straightforward process.
So doesn't that help the club if the county maintains those roads?
Yes, that is the modern way, and you know what we're dealing with here is kind of a legacy issue of the original declarant platted all this out, promised people that they were going to build the roads, and then didn't. So we're actually going back to the role that created the problem and asking them to solve it now. But in doing
Was that Wyndham or Tom?
that was not Tom and that was not Wyndham. That was the original Fairfield developer.
So are the roads predominantly unacceptable standard for the county to maintain? The one time I did a little bit of that, where I go down to the sewers and inspect and stuff before the village took ownership of them. Are they coming out, are they up to par?
Yeah, well, I mean, the grass roads are obviously not on the road list, these undeveloped areas. But like Laurelwood has been built and inspected by the county road superintendent. So, and that is what anyone developing here would work with the county to follow their development process, get the roads inspected, and then the county adds them to the road list. And what I see as a path forward that will help get these lots developed is, rather than a restrictive plan like what is being proposed to simply limit it to one person doing this development, would be an open plan which is following the law, state law, and that multiple builders go in and develop areas like Laurelwood, and possibly even, builders working in conjunction with one another, identify an area, 2 or 3 builders get together, pool the money and develop the area and put the lots, build the homes.
But Isaac, I'm sorry, because when you're talking like this, and then we move on to a different slide, people are like, yeah. But in reality, because you're a smart businessman, you bought all those lots from the people. Then you put in the roads. Then being the smart businessman that you are, you charged the new buyers for the roads. You rolled that into the cost of their home, correct?
Yes.
So, of course, right? But you're making it sound like if Tom Anderson was gonna do that, yes, because people now own some C lots, where previous years declarant only owned the C lots, so they could do whatever they wanted, and they would put in the roads, and like you did, roll it over into the cost of the home. Right now, if there was a couple of, what would you have done? Because there's 14 lots there, I believe, and you developed either 6 or 8 only of them, if I recall. What would you have done if one of those lots did not want to say the one around the cul-de-sac there, what would you have done as a builder that owned 13 out of 14 lots? What would you have done? What would you have been able to actually do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you have a lot owner there that does not want to sell, they said, nope, I don't want to sell my lot, and they are paying all their taxes and are paying all their dues to the club and doing what they're supposed to do, they keep their lot, and you make a business decision on whether or not you're willing to put all the infrastructure in and only get 13 lots. You just run the math on it. And if you can't find an area where there's a big enough concentration of people willing to sell, you don't develop it. It's simple business to
So
solve.
isn't that something like a declarant would be able to do? They could find a bunch of people that want to sell their lots that are buildable. They could also say, okay, great, give me your lots, if you don't want to pay the 10 grand.
Absolutely. The declarant could go in and follow this model. Anyone could go in and follow this model that wanted to develop property in accordance with the county's guidelines for developing. And that's what I'm proposing, is an open model where, and I think naturally that was where we were headed in the South until Anderson came in and stuck his flag in the ground and said, I'm not going to let anyone else develop any of this. You have to only use
As this is right in the CNR.
in the CNRs, which is in violation with state law.
But let me just ask you this. Our vote coming up is it's not to change the CNRs in any way, except will Tom Anderson be allowed to charge Mary $10,000 for infrastructure, or sell the lot? You know, it's forcing my hand, if you will.
Yes.
We are not voting on what could happen down the line, et cetera, though you are speaking as if those are also issues. The only thing we are voting on is if Tom says to Mary, I'm developing here, what do you want to do? Decide what you want to do. Now, Mary, being stubborn, might decide, well, if Tom's got 15 and I'm 16, Tom's going to put that infrastructure in regardless, and Mary's not going to pay anything.
You're gonna pay. That's what you're voting.
He's going to have to buy it from him, and he doesn't have to buy it from me. Yes, he's not taking the lot. You have to sell it. You can sell it to him. You can sell it. Guys, it's right there in the paper.
You can, but if you choose not to, he can force you.
Legally force it.
Say no up to $1,000 for your lot, and you're gonna say, I don't want $1,000, say, fine, keep your lot, I'm gonna charge you $15,000, because I'm putting a road in. And now you have a lot, you have $16,000, and it's now an A lot, and you're gonna pay double the fees on it. No, that's wrong. One at a time.
Yeah.
Own question.
So let me talk. I got one more slide, and then let's get full on into the Q&A.
You have to be able to explain to if we're using Tom's method, what would have been done.
So if we're using the proposed method, he's going to already have exclusive control of 6 of those club lots. So he's got those for $1,000 a piece. He, I think, has an agreement to get the county lots, so maybe he picks those up at $1,000 a piece. And the remaining 7 lot owners, or whatever that math works out to be, he sends a letter and says, I'm putting in a road, and my development cost is going to be X. Whatever he chooses is what it says. So $10,000 or $100,000. We don't know. They will either pay that or have a lien put on their property.
Or sell it back to them.
Or sell it back to him at a price that he wants to pay you, which will probably be about $1,000. I mean, I can't imagine that he would say, oh, I'll go ahead and pay you $30,000 for your lot. It's not going to do that.
Did they pay $30,000 for a C lot?
What's that?
Was the C lot cost $30,000?
So If you go, it's interesting, if you go back and look at these plats on the tax maps, you can find original owners that bought golf course lots that still own them that paid $30,000 for these lots. Or more. And they did not buy a membership lot. It was interesting, I had a gentleman come into the office, this was last week, I guess, and he brought in some paperwork he wanted me to see. And he was probably, I think maybe in his early 80s, and he said, "How long do you think I've been a member here?" And I said, "I don't know." And he goes, "Since 1971. And he goes, "I have some of my original sales documents here, and I want you to know I'm voting no because I was one of the first people to buy lots here, and you know what we were always promised?" He goes, "This was not the he goes, "This is not the deal we were promised. We were always promised when we bought a lot that we would have the road put in, water and sewer." He goes, "That was the deal." And I know, there have been some lawsuits with the previous developer over this, and, you can argue all that if you want. But the idea that we're bringing development to people through this amendment that was always promised them, yes, by making them pay for their own development, I don't see how that tracks. So let me go through this slide, and then we can get into more questions if you guys have more questions. Why your vote matters. Let's talk about Wyndham. Wyndham has, according to Anderson, is publicly supporting this amendment. Of course they are. I believe, as far as I can tell, he tells Wyndham how to vote because of his senior level position where he came from at Wyndham. They control 1,700 and some odd votes, close to 1,800 votes, through their timeshares and privately owned property that they have. So the real threshold when this number of 75, it does need 75% of the voting members to get this to pass. But this amendment is starting off with 100% support. It's starting off with a 1,700 vote lead, 1,800 vote lead. And just frankly, like when you look at we all know Wyndham has decided to pull out, and hopefully there's another company that will come in and take over that position, and it will be a good transition. But, I don't think that we should let an entity that's choosing to not invest in our community determine its future, right as they're closing the door. And I mean, if you look at the numbers, if the members will get out and vote and will vote no against this, they can absolutely stop it, but they have to vote.
How many votes are there? How many total membership?
That's a good question that I don't know off the top of my head. So.
11,933.
Okay. So. She's got a microphone if you guys have questions.
What's to prevent you from doing the same thing you did at Laurelwood, anyplace else in the community?
Well, currently what is preventing me is the declarant that is saying he is the sole judge and will stop that.
Where does it say that in the change?
It already says that in the CNRs. And that is a separate legal issue that's going to have to get sorted out once. This amendment is just another step in the wrong direction. So we need to stop this amendment from passing, and then there is legal clarification that is going to have to happen in the rights that the declarant is asserting that he has.
Out of the 2,000 lots that Wyndham's controlling, and then you said that basically Fairfield Glade turned over control of another 2,000 lots to him. Who has the voting rights on those lots?
So those only lots where members are paying dues have a vote. So those lots are not having dues paid on them, so they don't have a vote. You get a vote for every property you own, because we are not a HOA, we are a property owners association.
I have a question about
The fact, and it may have been answered earlier in another presentation, but if the declarant were able to buy those Wyndham lots, does he continue to pay monthly dues to the community club?
I would assume that he, unless he worked some deal out with the club, but if he was, my understanding would be if he was going to have a vote associated with them, he would have to pay the dues.
Actually, I have two questions. One goes back to how did the declarant even get approved without having a full, I mean, I came in later than this, but what happened in 2017 that this wasn't put up to the membership, and what kind of backdoor deal happened there? That's the first question.
Well, my understanding, I mean, it was just kind of announced that Wyndham has, that is a role that has always existed in the CNRs, that declarant role.
Okay.
And that role can be sold. And that's also an important distinction here we need to understand is Anderson has been up here pitching this as you're giving it to me, and look at what all I've done for the community. I'm going to be a good guy and do this. But he is also setting himself up in a position to sell his role. And that he had always maintained in my early discussions with him, and I know the previous board said he had always maintained he had a 10-year horizon here. He has been here for about 8 years. Mm-hmm. I think most likely that's what he's doing, is setting himself up to sell this role to whomever.
My second question is, well, what happened since 2017 and now? How were roads put in other than Laurelwood? Were roads developed in the last 8 years?
There were. You can find examples. Laurelwood is the nicest example of it being done, but there are examples throughout. You can go on the backside of Lake Kirkstone right now. There's a guy building a house on the lake, and he put a gravel road all the way out to his lot. And, if you drive around, you could find handfuls of examples of where that was done. I think King John Lane is another one down in that area that got developed.
Isaac, I have two questions. You said Anderson is building 20% of the homes.
A little less than 20%, yeah.
24 homes. What percentage of the homes are you currently building?
We're building about that same number.
Okay, then the second part of that is, who are the next three largest builders behind you and Anderson? And why aren't they coming forward and talking about this amendment?
Well, I have spoken with a lot of them. Rocksteady is one of the other builders. Brock's actually here today. I don't know if he wants to be called out or not, but. So I have talked to what I felt like were most of the larger builders here. I don't know, I'm not sure, other than Rocksteady, who, that kind of shifts around over the years based on the number. Fairfield and our company are definitely kind of ahead of the pack as far as volume, and then there's 20-some builders here, so most of these guys are building a couple of houses a year.
All right, thank you.
First of all, thank you for doing this, taking your time. Obviously, you have an interest, a financial interest, but what does it mean that Tom has quote-unquote control of the lots, of those?
Well, when I say he says he has control of the sole judge role that he is asserting he has control, is that he has to approve if any improvements get made in that right-of-way, or...
But he paid $5,000 annually or whatever to control that.
Well, no, so he paid with the deal he made in December, he paid $5,000 a year to control close to 2,000 club-owned lots for the next 20 years. So the club can't sell your assets to anyone else right now with that deal. It's just not a good deal for the club.
So
it's terrible.
Is that because he's the declarant, or is that because he's...
That's because I think he convinced the board that was the right move to let him secure all this property.
And how does that happen without POA approval?
Well, I mean, the board does have certain rights, and I am not a legal expert, but I do know that it was brought up in the meeting and then voted on right there in the same meeting before anybody could comment on it. Because as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a terrible deal. I can't believe they would vote on that.
This is all kind of one huge multiple question, but we gave the declarant, as an individual particularly, way too much power. And the declarant needs to be an entity that isn't one dude. And we need to visit that at some point. But the last question, if this CNR proposal is counter to state or federal law, what difference does it make what the vote is? If it violates the law and state and federal law supersedes any HOA agreement,
Yeah, it's just another layer of legal fight that the club is going to have to unwind this. And
it automatically gets allowed because it got...
if it gets passed by the club, that is going to signal that, like, oh, this is what the community wants. And then it's just harder to unwind that.
But somebody would have to take legal action.
Somebody's going to have to pay out of pocket to do that. I guess I'm saying I don't want to pay out of pocket to do that. Yeah.
So the question I got is, really, it's a question and a statement, and you're probably not the one, but the board is why are we rushing into a vote when we got all this uncertainty right now in this community? With Wyndham leaving, with what's going on, because what's happening here is we're not looking at this saying there's not a strategic plan. From what I've seen, there's no strategic plan that tells us where we're going to spend our dollars. We're talking about they're falling short and they need HOA fees. But then yet you turn around and you give someone 2,000 lots of $5,000 when those C lots bring how much per lot?
Yeah, and the deal was to control the lots for the next 20 years. So
Yeah,
he's paying
so-
that, and then $1,000 per lot when he buys
So we're
them.
foregoing income, but now that's water under the bridge, okay? But why are we gonna vote and why are we doing this to keep putting ourselves into a hole? Because we haven't looked at this thing from a strategic side. And if you look at it, you know, there's a really wise book out there, if anybody knows about it, called the Bible. And in the Bible, there's one thing it does talk about, which is unity. Unity means it's not conformity. But unity means it's like there's a common cause that we all get together. Christ was that cause. Now you say, well, how does Christ have anything to do with this? Well, in the book, if you took that out and you said in unity, if you looked at it, you would say, wait a minute, let me just read you what unity means. A state of being one, harmonious and unified, particularly within the body of Christ. Well, if I just took that out and put in the body, if it was instead of the body of Christ, if we were unified as a Fairfield Glade community, and we all have a point, but we need to know what that direction is to be unified. And unity is not uniformity or the sameness, but rather about a shared bond, purpose, rooted in Christ. That would be rooted in this community. And despite our differences in backgrounds or opinions, so it gives us that we can have a conversation. The thing we're missing here is there are 5 stakeholders in this community. And if you look at the stakeholders, Tom Anderson is one. He does have a right. He has a contract, okay? He's doing what he thinks is right for him, okay? But there's ways to get together and do this without lawyers come in, because when lawyers come in, we're all going to pay for that. The decisions the board's making is going to come back in our HOA dues eventually, because someone's got to pay for it, and it's going to be the one sitting here, right here in this room, okay? The second thing is you've got builders. Well, why are builders interested? Well, it's their livelihood. They're the ones looking at this thing saying, hey, this drives livelihood for us. The money's put back in the community. We need more homes to cover HOA fees, okay? So by giving it to one builder with no stipulations around when they have to build and when they're gonna build, those lots could sit there for 20 years. So there's gonna be no development to bring more money in this community. So that's 2. 3, homeowners, okay? Homeowners, why did we all move here? One thing was to keep our cost of living down, our retirement dollars go further, okay? A great community to be in that offered things that we all want, okay? But now, what are we getting, all right? The second thing is you gotta look at it and say, you know, okay, another one is Wyndham. Why is Wyndham pulling out? I mean, I'd like to know that. Why are they pulling out? Are we gonna do the same thing? Someone else comes and buys it in, but then yet they're gonna be strangled. We need to understand, we gotta have a strategic plan before we keep going on this road and making decisions, and the wrong decisions we can't get out of. And by turning control over and keep giving control to a developer, okay, is the wrong move. I used to do land development. I know about this stuff. He did the right thing. If it doesn't make sense to go in and develop a lot, you don't do it. Okay? It's just math. Okay? But sitting here and controlling and eliminating our builders and what the diversity we can have in this community is the wrong thing to do. And I just don't understand what we're going to do about it. But something needs to be done.
Well, yes, thank you. You said that better than I probably could have. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, what I want for this community is options for people when they come here to buy a house. You know, a more open, there are thousands of lots to be developed down there. And if we take a restrictive approach, it's not going to be good long-term for the community.
But if he only has to pay $5,000 for 20 years, right? Per year. Per year, $5,000 per year for 20 years. And they're not paying HOA fees off these lots, right?
No, the club owns the lot, so they're not collecting any revenue on these lots. So essentially, for the next 20 years, he would only have to pay $100,000, I'm doing that math right, to keep those lots from being sold.
Buy that lot that will pay you.
Yes.
So he's sucking up an area that might really be good.
Yes. That alone, when I saw that come out, I was like, is this just a huge anti-competitive move to stop other builders? Because there are so many club-owned lots. Really, to develop, you've got to be able to buy the club-owned lots and roll them into your development.
Right.
So, and then the CNR amendment came out, and I saw that that was maybe part of the bigger plan.
The property owners are gonna get screwed.
Yes.
Because she didn't have a microphone, I can't hear what she's saying, but I think I'm going to ask the same question.
Okay.
That's like, how much money
She has the microphone.
Hold on.
Every time one of us buys a house or somebody comes in here, they pay $5,000 to do that, correct?
Yes.
And the fees, and that is not happening here. So why is no one talking about the millions of dollars that are being lost, and we have roads that we have to dodge potholes, and this guy gets to do this? So on that side of it, we've got somebody that, I'm better than you, so I get to do this, and you guys just deal with it. So I think she was saying the same thing, but nobody's talking about the dollar amounts attached to that that's going to hit us. And that's, I don't care how you divide that, it's going to raise our fees. So how is that legal that he doesn't have to pay it and we do, and then he can charge to put roads in?
It's very legally questionable, which is why we sent the board a letter on May 2nd asking them to pause the vote until the legal issues could get sorted out with this. And they chose to ignore that and move forward with the vote. And your question to why the board is pushing to get this done right now, I believe they are pushing to get it done right now because Anderson is pushing to get it done. And he knows that there's potentially a timeline on his control with the Wyndham vote. I would suspect that he probably knew this was happening this year, just from the level of his level of influence or where he came from in Wyndham. He probably caught wind, and that's why he was trying to get the vote put through. I don't think it's typical to vote on an amendment like that apart from a standard election cycle anyway, and it was trying to get put through in the spring. So,
I say, whether we vote yes or no, though, he already has control of those 2,000 lots, whether we vote yes or no, correct?
yes.
So really, that's what should have been voted on. Yes. I mean, we're screwed either way here.
We don't get a vote on that, but that is, again, that is a separate issue that would have to get unwound and is, you know, something further down the line.
Right, but if you wanted to build another section like you just did, and 10 of those lots were club-owned lots, you can't touch them unless he says you can,
Currently, yes,
whether we vote yes or no.
correct. So,
But you can still buy lots and build a road,
But now,
up to them, just so you don't have to buy club-owned lots.
yes, but practically speaking for builders, if we're gonna have development happen in the south, that deal has to get undone with the club. That is not an acceptable deal, and
What deal?
the deal to give to give close to 2,000 lots to the declarant.
But that's not what we're gonna be.
That's not what we're voting on, and
And let's be very clear that these CNRs we're talking about didn't just happen in 2017. They happened in 1974-ish with the original declarant. It's only become an issue because the original declarant owned all the land. There was not any separate owners. That land was all owned by the original guy. So if he wanted to put something right outside these doors, he was able to put in the infrastructure, Fairfield Glade put in the sewers, and he didn't have to worry about any voting because he owned the land. The issue comes because Fairfield started selling the lots to individual owners, which otherwise, if Fairfield never did this, let's be honest, whether you were the declarant or Tom Anderson or Susie Snowflake, you would not be coming to us because you would have had the control without any other owners having any other say about it. Is that not correct?
yes, and this is because the original declarant did not fulfill, and you know, the promise of putting the infrastructure and the development in like they were supposed to.
He went belly up. Didn't he lose everything, the original?
The original declarant filed for bankruptcy, yes.
So did Fairfield. Go ahead. So how many lots?
I have a question, and it's more of a comment. We came from a really nice gated community in Arkansas, and what they called that little situation is an improvement district. And 20 years before we got there, a builder of questionable reputation sold this kind of a plan. And the idea was even more written in the law that they had to keep track of their expenses and then they could divide that expenses among the landholders. Well, I'm telling you, 20 years after that, they were still collecting $1 million a year from the landowners. And I went to the county and I started reading the records and I learned the law. They had zero receipt in the file. But like you said, once it's happening, it happens. And I talked to judges, I talked to senators, I talked to mayors, I talked to representatives, and they all said, oh, and then they'd pass it to somebody else, and nobody did anything. So to me, the most dangerous thing, even if we trusted Tom, thought he's a great guy, he's honest, he's gonna keep his word, he's gonna build nice homes, he's gonna put roads in, it'll be great. The fact that you're saying he gets to charge whatever he wants, for goodness sakes, it could say something like, whoever builds the roads can charge the price of the roads and say 10% per profit or 20% or whatever's a fair profit. But you're giving him carte blanche to charge whatever he wants. And I'm telling you, they don't stop charging. And all the improvements were done, nothing else was happening, no receipts. I wouldn't vote on that just because of that clause. That is just a snake's nest. Ooh.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comment because all of, whether you agree with any of the other legal arguments here, that was a clause that was clearly written by the declarant to give him the authority to do whatever he wanted. And it does not protect the members.
I asked the early question about if he was going to pay dues on those lots, and you said you didn't know, but I'm confused now because I heard different answers. essentially coming from the audience. So is he gonna pay dues on those newly acquired lots that he gets this?
So my understanding is if he acquires lots and once they are developed, then he will start paying dues on those lots, once the development is completed.
Okay, I have another question, and it's not directly related to this issue, and I apologize, but let's say you're elected to the board, regardless of whether this passes or doesn't pass. Do you have other members of the board that think like you, or are you just gonna be one of 6 that has nothing to do, can't do anything, like the current board has? And thirdly, I'd like to know why there's so many damn executive decisions, executive things. I've been involved in politics and POAs and everything else, and there's only 2 reasons to be allowed to have an executive action. And part of that question is, are they running by Robert's Rules of Order? What are they running by?
It's a good question. I'm not in those meetings, but, and I'm not here to talk about me, running to be on the board. But I would certainly think that you shouldn't have a situation where all the decisions are getting made in executive session and then they just come out and vote and everything's unanimous. There should be open discussion in these board meetings. And you should have some dissenting members that say, I don't agree with this. Everything should not be unanimous. That's not a good sign. So, if I do get on the board, I'll find out if I have any allies. I don't know.
You'll have some in the community though.
Next year, people need to run, when there's another election, people need to get off their carcasses and run. Yes.
And that, to your point, that is exactly what I want in my running. I think that if I do the math, I know, the guy I'm running against is almost certainly getting the Wyndham vote. I'm sure not getting it. That the likelihood that I would actually beat him is pretty slim. But what I want to do is show the community that I do care and I'm trying to do what I can. And I want to encourage other members. I mean, there's a lot of talent in this community. I know a lot of people that are way more qualified to be on the board than me. But they need to get out there and run. Do it.
And people need to vote.
Yes, and people need to vote. And the members have to vote if they want to say, because in the absence of voting, Wyndham is running the show. And the declarant, via Wyndham, is running the show.
The longer opportunities pass, the more rock, the harder it is gonna
Yes.
be to reverse
Yes.
anything.
Yes.
Once he owns and uses your own money to develop all kinds of lots and gets the tab to be able, now he's got hundreds of votes, if he's got hundreds of lots.
Correct.
That are developed, and if he needs 200, he just takes more money from the citizens. So once it starts, it's a mushrooming thing, and a lot of his, we're underwriting his risks with the development because it's coming from our pockets, not his.
Yes. No, the normal development process, like I said, is that the developer takes the risk and put the money into the deal. You don't charge the private landowners for your development costs. That is, in my mind, unheard of.
Is it safe to say that whoever takes 1,800 votes with them?
Probably, so there's and we've got somebody with a question back here, but I think most likely you get an operator comes in that buys the timeshare and then has that block of voting, and then it will remain to be seen what Wyndham does with their 1,200 and some lots that they have. I don't believe they would want to just hang on to those now that they don't have any operations here. So.
I came today because I wanted to address what you were saying about people need to get out and vote. I found out this morning because my friend told me she was sent a sample voting from Fairfield. I never received one. And all of my friends haven't received one either. So I called today and she says, well, are you signed up for the email blasts? I don't know what an email blast is until today. I've lived here 2 years, 2.5 years. Nobody ever told me I needed to sign up to be able to fill out a survey or to vote or do anything. and none of it is on the website or anything. And so we need to let everyone know they need to go onto the website, go to the bottom, sign up for emails, or they won't even get to vote.
We moved here 6.5 years ago. My neighbors told me that like 2 weeks after we moved in. So, yeah, nobody told us when we moved in.
Yeah. Nobody has said a word. And so they said the survey was less than 20%. It was really low. Well, I would have done it if I had known there was a survey.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't see into those numbers and how many people are getting the emails or not, but that is certainly concerning how many members are actually aware of being able, that they need to vote on this, yes, that the vote is even happening, and especially when you have such a huge block of votes that is going to go one way or the other depending on what the declarant and Wyndham want.
Am I next? Oh, all right. In fairness, I'll say I'm Greg Jones. I'm president of the board, so my questions are coming from the board perspective. And I will say very quickly, not everyone will vote electronically. If you don't get an email, you're going to get a ballot. It's going to come in the regular mail. There's almost 12,000 ballots that'll go out. 12,000 ballots will go out. So just because you didn't get the notice today doesn't mean you won't get a ballot. You will. Okay. My question is really one about voting. Available to the board were two ways of voting for this amendment. One was what is contained in the CNRs, which basically says you have to have a physical meeting, and 75% of the people who attend that meeting will determine whether, 100% of the people that attend that meeting, 75% voting would pass the bill or pass the act. Anything less than that would deny it. The way the board chose was another way that's in our bylaws, which basically says it's called action by written ballot, which means we have to send a ballot to every individual that owns property here. Now, we received a letter from your attorney, who's representing you, last week that basically said we do not want to have a written ballot. What we want is to have a physical meeting. Now, I believe that severely limits the number of people that are going to have an input on this, and many of those which are going to be living out of state, all over the place, they will not be here for a physical meeting. So I've got two questions for you. One is, why are you advocating for a more restrictive way of voting on this, number one? And number two, why did you wait until 2 weeks before the election or before the balloting to come forward and even raise the issue? Because we've been talking about this since April.
Yeah, so my attorneys have been doing and I have a very qualified land use attorney that writes CNRs in Nashville that has been reviewing this at my own expense, because I want to understand what the rights of the members are. And I certainly what I want is the members' voice to be heard here, and I want us to follow what it says in the CNRs. And the attorney brought that up in the last couple of weeks, that he didn't feel like the way the vote was actually being conducted for this was in accordance with the CNRs. And that's when he sent the letter to the club's attorney. So I don't know if that's, he seemed pretty confident that it was not actually valid how the club is conducting this election as it pertains to changing the CNRs, because it was very specific about how it had to be done. He was just bringing that up, like, let's just put this out here. This may not even be legal how you're asking us to conduct the vote.
If it wasn't preserved, most of us wouldn't even know this was happening.
So what's the response from the board, Mr. Jones?
My attorney said the response was crickets. The board chose to not respond, other than this response.
That's not true. We sent a letter yesterday, or an email. Wait. We got the letter it for the first time last Friday. That's when we saw it. So we responded within 3 business days, and we had to look into it. But our response is, we're going ahead with the election, letting everyone vote, not to restrict it to a meeting.
And I would add the club's attorney should probably be a little more prompt at informing the board what's going on if they're taking a week to get them that information.
Here. I don't know if I need the microphone. Microphones intimidate me. Right, okay. So, I'm listening to this conversation. I've watched the video, I watched the debate. We're very interested in the future of this community. We moved here from a community of 3.5 million people, where it only took 30% of the registered voters to win an election. Okay? So this election is very, very important, and it's going to take everybody to get out and vote. I've heard all the questions, I've heard all the answers here today in person, on the video, online. It's time to vote. Anybody that's undecided at this point, I don't know what to tell you. It's obvious what's going on here. Okay? And so I thought about it today. I almost didn't make it here today, but I thought about it. And there's 2 words that jumped out at me. One word is profiteering. To make or seek an excessive or unfair profit. The other word was monopoly. We all know about the game Monopoly, right? A market structure where a single company dominates the supply, leaving no room for direct competition. That's what we're talking about here. It's so simple. We can talk about it and talk about, and I have to thank you, really, personally, and everybody here, I think, for your courage, your personal courage, to stand up to this. You're a stand-up guy. That's what we call guys where I come from, okay? And so I hope this turns out to our benefit. Because I'll tell you what, I don't want to move again. I tell everybody, you see this hat I wear? I'm Tennessee through and through. But it's at a point here where everybody's going to have to make this decision and move forward with this. And I hope to God that we all decide and by the way, call your neighbors and talk to other people. If you called 20 people or 10 people and each one of those people called somebody else about these issues. Number 1, to vote no, and number 2, when it comes to Isaac, vote yes.
I just have 2 points to make, but no questions. But the first is that the way I see us in the future controlling this or taking it into our hands is to get rid of the declarant concept, however that can be done. Second point is, as I understand it, been told that the president of the board makes $250,000, $250,000 salary for the job. So
I think that's maybe the general manager. And that is public online, any public or nonprofit, I think you could look up the salaries of the top 5 executives. So, and I don't know that the right thing is that we don't have a declarant role going forward, but that role needs to be limited and kept in check by the board, not expanded. The declarant has the sole right to develop and bring new subdivisions in. That is what he is doing in the north. But what he's trying to do is expand that control over all of Fairfield, essentially.
Okay, a few things. One, we all realize that we have to vote no and yes. okay? But what can we do? We know what to do as a community, but what can we do in the judicial system to make this change and make this not happen anymore? Is there something we can do as a community? Write to congressmen, talk to state reps, whatever.
I think talking to the county commissioners, talk to the county mayor, trust me, Fairfield has a lot of political sway. You do. You guys elect Cameron Sexton, who's the Speaker of the House, who's like one of the most powerful people in our state. And they listen to what you say. So if you say something's happening you don't like, the local government officials will listen to you. Okay?
I would just like to point something out. It came to our attention. The people surrounding our president are with the declarant, okay? They're buddying up with him. He's running for them. He's working for them. And we need to get rid of the board of directors and redo our system totally, because they are not in our best interest.
I think that gets to the underlying point that I have tried to make in running for the board and in this issue, is that the board needs to be representing the interests of the members, not the declarant. That's the declarant is going to look out for his own interests, and he has found a sympathetic board that is helping him accomplish his aims. But
I have a question, perhaps for the board member. So it says it takes 75% for the election to go. But sir, is that 75% of the people that vote, or is it 75% of all the possible voters?
75% of the voting.
Of the ones who do vote? Okay, so okay, conceivably, Wyndham's gonna have 1,800 for theirs. If there were 1,800 of opposed votes, what happens if it's a tie vote or less than 75? Then does it fail?
If it's less than 75, it fails.
Thank you.
Why is the vote not being delayed? Greg, why is the vote not being delayed?
It was delayed once. If you don't have the answer, then have the answer, okay? It was delayed once. We believe that the issues are out there, and that delaying again, there's not going to be any new information that comes out. Those people that are saying, well, wait on Wyndham, Wyndham really has nothing to do with this vote. Wyndham only has said that it's closing its operations for timeshare. The votes, the 1,251 votes or properties they own, they have not communicated to us at all that they're planning on selling them. They have not communicated to us at all that they're going to stop not paying their dues. So it would be tantamount to saying that anybody who has their house on the market, well, we ought to not let them vote. The fact of the matter is that Wyndham timeshares are separate. Those are voted by a group of homeowner association directors. They do not get voted on by Wyndham. The Wyndham properties do. So everything probably that we're going to know, as someone said, people who have not made up their mind on this issue at this point, there's a lot of information out there on both sides. Look at it.
So what's the urgency if they're not going to start with clarification?
I don't want to turn this into a board
Well,
meeting.
I know you don't, but you just opened it up. So the question is, why is there such an urgency? Because even if this thing passed when we vote,
There is no urgency. We
Let me talk, okay? Let me talk. You want me to talk, or you want to talk like we do everything else with the board when people come and ask questions? The question is, why is there such an urgency then to do this? Because even if it passes, they're not going to start building tomorrow, and you won't even share what's in the agreement for these 2,000 lots. What's the accountability for the builder to start doing something because you're losing revenue sitting there that's not gonna help this community, and you're gonna start asking us, because all I hear is, well, your HOPs can go up, they should go up, okay? Stop that. You should already have a business plan that tells us, if we don't vote yes, what are the implications of this community? You should already have the answers, okay? So the question is, if you don't need the money tomorrow, then you know what? I see why you wanna vote, but the question is, I don't think you do, because you're giving this guy carte blanche, and you haven't put any time restrictions around it.
Well, he doesn't have carte blanche. And number two, we're gonna agree to disagree about what you just stated, because
Well,
I don't.
we can disagree to disagree, because I don't think you know what you're talking
The board
about.
gives members and homeowners just like everybody else here.
All right,
Except for two.
well, I guess we'll see what we can do.
Point of clarification, you just said that Wyndham's not in communication with the board. Can you guarantee us that that's true for Tom Anderson as well? Is he and Wyndham not in any communication whatsoever as well?
How would I know?
I think it's pretty safe to assume that he is. And, you know, he announced, I think, in one of his meetings that he had control over these Wyndham lots, too, and what happens with those. So
that's 1,800 votes plus 1,200 votes?
no, it's 1,700 and some votes with the timeshares and my understanding is the timeshare, they speak with Wyndham Corporate about casting those votes. So I think the timeshare votes, and when you look at historic voting, there's a huge discrepancy in anybody that wins, which kind of correlates to all those votes going one way or the other. They vote in a block, essentially. Yes.
This question is for Greg. I would like to know, outside of Wyndham, how many votable ballots are there in this community? Is it 6,000, 10,000, 12,000?
I think the last time that we had an election, which was last year for the director, there were about 11,820 votes that were available. Now, you have to be a member in good standing, so that's not how many actual property owners there are. If you're not a member of good standing, you do not get to vote. So that number is going to be less than what the total property owners are. But it's right around there. There's not a whole lot of people that are members not in good standing.
And how many people voted percentage-wise, Greg?
I'm sorry?
How many people voted percentage-wise last year?
29%.
This guy in the back's got a question.
We gotta change it.
Let's try to refrain from speaking without the microphone.
Isaac, can you simply tell us what this changes in the CNR with the vote that we're voting on? Simplify it. Does it mean that Tom can just go in and put in infrastructure where he chooses and pre-charge before homes are built there? What the cost was for him to do this? Whereas you did it, you rolled it into the homes. Are you saying that he is gonna pre-charge it before any homes are built on these lots?
Essentially, yes. This is not tied to any homes getting built. It's tied to when he sends them the assessment and says, you're going to have to pay this amount or we're putting a lien on the property. So there's no guarantee of homes being built on these lots.
Why would he put a road in if you're not gonna build a house? Because he gets the money.
Well, depending on how much the assessments are, he might make a profit off of putting the road in.
This is common in every city. When the city decides to put an improvement in on the street, then they charge people by the front foot.
The key distinction there is the city is not a for-profit entity, which the declarant is. I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with this if this was Cumberland County saying we're going to create a benefit district here and put the roads in, and we're going to be transparent about how we're going to do this and assess the lot owners and do it. That would be reasonable. But to give all that control to a private entity that can charge whatever they want is just, that's not acceptable.
How would you feel if you were the declarant? How would you feel if you were the Tom Anderson of the CNR?
So I would feel like I was getting a really sweet deal. But I also, in how I conduct and how I have always tried to conduct my business dealings, you know, and I grew up watching my dad, he's actually here tonight, run his business, that you don't screw people over. And I see in how that is written, he didn't say it to me that way, but there is a lot of opportunity to take advantage of people with what this says. And to me, that's not acceptable.
And what are the three things, when I own my C lot, what are my options? Tell me again. I can sell it back to him, or what?
You can sell it back to him. The club has indicated currently that they would let you swap it with another lot, although that's not what's written to the change here. I mean, really all you're voting on is giving him the authority to charge you money.
Right.
And the club may or may not honor whatever other.
But if I didn't want to pay the money, I could give him back my lot.
You could give him back your lot, or you can hold on to your lot and you're going to have a lien against it and you can't sell it without the lien being cleared.
Or I could pay the $10,000, let me just use the
Yeah.
sum of $10,000. I could pay the $10,000 and then call Isaac and say, hey buddy, want to buy a lot?
Yes.
Correct?
But the key here is you're being forced to pay this money.
If
It's not your option.
I bought a C lot 30 years ago with the promise that I would have infrastructure put in. Yes, I understand that the promise was infrastructure was going to be put in, maybe not at the lot owner's cost. But if I had an opportunity to have my lot with road, sewer, and water, and then I could turn around and say to Zuercher, or there's a new builder even in the Village Green Mall right now, and could say, hey, I've got this lot. Would you not want to have that lot, especially as it stands right now that you are, according to the CNRs, not available to put in infrastructure? Would a builder not be happy to say, hey, sure, I'll buy that lot for you for $30,000?
I think right now a builder's not going to buy that C lot until this legal issue gets cleared up, because they're going to face a challenge from the declarant if they try to make improvements up to that property right now.
And doesn't the declarant already have a group of builders in his consortium that are happy to, don't say no, he's got it, it's right in the paper. And maybe you are or are not part of it.
Oh, I'm certainly not part of it now. No, there are a handful of what I would call smaller pickup truck builders that, as part of his consortium of builders, that list their homes with him. And I think that's what he's referring to, list their homes with Glade Realty. I've got a question back.
Yeah, Isaac. Number one, I've lived here 25 years, and I've seen a lot going on. Can I just have you go through two timelines? One is, what year did Tom Anderson become declarant? And two, what year did you and Weber and the board agree to do Laurelwood?
So he became the declarant, I think it was around September of 2017.
Okay.
And the Laurelwood agreement happened, which we actually have Laurelwood shirts over here if we have any supporters that want one. And it says on the back, it says a backroom deal, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, probably not. That was in 2020 that I signed an agreement to purchase those club lots, 6 club lots. And there was also, in that agreement, the club was agreeing to run sewer. And it basically said, if you're going to develop this, it's going to be at your expense. That's basically what it said.
And why did Tom allow that to happen?
You know, that's because he didn't even, I don't think he even knew that it said sole judge in the CNRs then, and he had an attorney review and come up with that wording, and then after the development was finished is when he started to assert that we can't have this happen anymore.
But what I'm hearing is, and what I see is that Laurelwood was very successful.
I think it was a blueprint that threatened him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of non-disclosure agreements, but is that why Weber lost his job? Because he pushed so hard with the board to allow you to do that, and you were successful doing it. Did it cost him his job?
I don't know. To be honest, I wasn't part of any of why.
With NDAs, none of us know.
Yeah, and you know, I met Weber and talked to him afterwards because I felt like in general, Weber worked hard for this community, whether you agreed with how he handled things or not. He didn't talk to me about why he was fired.
Well, just want to point out, after 25 years, for me, beginning in 2017, things changed and not for the better.
Yeah. No more questions? Are we good?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Yeah.
Thank you for taking that leadership
Yeah,
role.
thanks for
You really,
speaking up.
yeah.
How you doing?
Thanks.
One thing that came to mind is, with his past record, all the laws that kind of got, all goes through without proper review, all the little ins and outs, the estimate on what they did with the snack bar, and all these little things. If you sit there and document line by line and form a pattern, and like he says, you got profiteering, monopoly, and the underlying pattern, that can be an issue, to my understanding, of racketeering, and bring a whole new class. And now also, if you read the U.S. Constitution, with all government, small and large, of the people, by the people, and you start to see some of the principles, you could dig.
Yes. Yes.
You could dig a grave.
Yeah.
But it'd be very hard, especially in this legal climate.
And you know what? I want to, like,